The chameleon. An animal that changes color. That's how it's usually described, as if that single sentence were enough to understand it. As if its entire strangeness could be reduced to a simple visual trick easy to remember, even easier to repeat. And yet that's only the tip of the iceberg. Because the chameleon is not a curiosity, it is not a parlor trick of nature. It is one of the most highly specialized reptiles on Earth, a creature whose entire body was shaped for a very specific way of life. This is an animal that does not flee and does not attack head-on. It does not fight with strength or speed. It chooses something far more demanding: absolute control. Over movement. Over timing. Over when to become visible and when to disappear. A chameleon can spend hours being nothing more than a fragment of the world. A branch. A leaf. A shadow. Something that does not attract attention. And then without warning it makes a single movement, and the story is over. Color change? That is only the beginning of the story. A symbol of something much deeper. A mechanism that serves not only camouflage, but communication, emotion, temperature regulation, and even tension. So what is a chameleon, really? At first glance, a lizard. 4 limbs, a tail, scales, everything checks out. And that's where the first mistake begins, because the chameleon only resembles an ordinary lizard from a distance. In reality, it is a reptile that took a completely different evolutionary path than most of its relatives. It belongs to the family Chameleonidae, group so distinctive that a biologist can recognize it from a single detail: the eyes, the toes, the way it moves. This is not a random branch of the evolutionary tree. It is a separate philosophy of life. Today we know over 200 species of chameleons. Tiny ones that can perch on a matchstick, large ones nearly half a meter long. Green, brown, neon bright, spiny, smooth. And crucially, these are not variations on a single template. These are species that often differ from one another, more than dogs differ from wolves. And here is the key fact. About half of all chameleon species live in one place on Earth: Madagascar. This island is the absolute center of the chameleon world. Not one of the places, the center, an evolutionary incubator. A laboratory of nature that operated in isolation for millions of years. While continents shifted, while other reptiles competed for space, Madagascar remained a world apart. And chameleons exploited that separation to the fullest. That is why you find there both the smallest chameleons on Earth, barely visible against a leaf, and some of the largest massive, helmeted creatures that look like living relics of prehistory. Every fragment of the island rainforest, savanna, dry scrub has its own species, often confined to just a few square kilometers. Outside Madagascar, chameleons live mainly in Africa, with smaller populations in the Middle East, Southern Europe, and Asia. But nowhere else have they reached such diversity. And that tells us something important. The chameleon is not an animal that does well everywhere. It requires very specific conditions. When it gets them, it explodes into diversity. When it doesn't, it disappears. And this brings us to the most important misunderstanding. The chameleon is not just another lizard. Most lizards are active, fast, impulsive animals. They flee, they dart, they burst into motion. Their bodies are designed for sudden sprints and chaos. The chameleon does the exact opposite. It moves slowly, unnaturally slowly. Every step is deliberate, as if it were testing reality before committing to it. Its toes are not spread like those of other lizards, but fused into pincers that clamp around a branch. Its tail is not for balance, it is for holding on to the world, like a safety line. This is an arboreal animal in the purest sense. Not one that sometimes climbs trees, but one that lives in 3 dimensions. Every decision, every movement happens several meters above the ground, where there is no room for error. And that is why the chameleon looks so strange. Its body is not a compromise. It is a specialization. A sharp, unforgiving specialization that works perfectly in one environment and disastrously outside of it. This is not a reptile that adapted to the world. It is a reptile that forced the world to adapt to it. The chameleon's body looks as if it were designed from scratch for one very specific task. This is not a universal reptile, ready for multiple scenarios. It is a specialist, and that is obvious at first glance. Start with the silhouette. The chameleon's body is clearly flattened from side to side. Not round, not bulky, thin, leaf-like. This means that when it sits sideways to an observer, it almost disappears. Branch, leaf, shadow, everything begins to blend together. This is not an aesthetic coincidence, it is the physics of vision. The thinner the profile, the less noticeable it is. To a predator looking from below or from the side, the chameleon stops looking like an animal and starts looking like part of the background. That flattened shape has another purpose: stability. On thin branches swaying in the wind, every gram and every centimeter matters. A flattened body lowers the center of gravity and allows the chameleon to adhere better to the space it inhabits. It is like balancing on a tightrope. The better you distribute your mass, the harder it is to fall. The head is no accident, either. In many species, it forms a helmet, a crest, or a sharply defined ridge. On one level, this is communication, a signal to other chameleons. I'm adult. I'm strong. This is my territory. On another level, it further breaks up the body outline. The head is not smooth, not easily readable, not clearly recognizable as an animal face, and a predator's brain loves recognizing faces. The limbs of a chameleon are one of the most radical examples of how far evolution can depart from the standard lizard blueprint. In most reptiles, toes are spread, flexible, designed for running on the ground, fast starts, and abrupt changes of direction. In the chameleon, that scheme has been completely abandoned. The toes are fused into two opposing bundles, forming a structure known as zygodactyly. It has the same basic solution seen in climbing birds like parrots, but in the chameleon it has been refined to extreme precision. Each foot works like a mechanical gripper. One group of toes stabilizes the branch from one side, the other from the opposite side, creating a clamp that relies not on friction, but on pure muscular force. The toe arrangement is not random. On the front limbs, 2 toes are on the inner side and 3 on the outer. On the hind limbs, the pattern is reversed. This allows the chameleon to grip branches equally well, regardless of angle or direction of movement. And that matters because in the canopy there is no front or back in the human sense. Any surface can become the ground. The limb joints are set up in a way that limits speed but increases control. A chameleon cannot perform a sudden sprint, but it can place its foot at a perfect angle, even on a branch only a few millimeters thick. Each toe functions independently, responding to pressure and micro-movements of the substrate. The muscles of the forearms and lower legs are dense and endurance-oriented, designed for prolonged isometric tension. This means the chameleon can cling to a single point for long periods without trembling or fatigue. To predator or prey alike, this means one thing: the chameleon does not give itself away. It doesn't fidget, it doesn't adjust unnecessarily. It makes no wasted movements. Grasping limbs are also crucial for hunting. When a chameleon prepares to fire its tongue, it must remain absolutely stable. The force of the strike transfers through the entire body, and any loss of balance means a miss. The pincer-like toes act like a vice, locking the body into position, even if the branch is moving. It's also important to understand what the chameleon sacrifices for this specialization. On the ground, its limbs are clumsy. Its gait is awkward, slow, almost comical. But this is not a flaw, it is the price of perfection in a single environment. The chameleon is not a terrestrial animal, and its body makes no attempt to pretend otherwise. Grasping limbs are not an anatomical curiosity. They are the foundation of the chameleon's entire way of life. Without them, there would be no slow movement, no invisibility, no precise hunting, and none of that remarkable silence with which the chameleon exists in the arboreal world. Have you ever looked at a chameleon and thought, wow, that's one lazy lizard? Its slow, deliberate steps seem almost like a strange mannerism, a sign of low energy. But what if I told you that this slowness is one of the most brilliant evolutionary strategies in the animal kingdom? A chameleon doesn't move slowly because it can't move faster. It moves slowly because faster would be worse. Let's start with where it lives. The chameleon's world is a network of branches, thin twigs, and leaves. Nothing is ever truly stable. Every sudden movement sends vibrations through this network, acting like a loud alarm that instantly reveals the animal's location. In the arboreal world, movement is a signal. And a signal attracts attention, whether from a hungry predator or a potential meal. So for a chameleon, slowness is a form of silence. The slower you move, the less noise you make. But there's more to it than just staying quiet. The chameleon's body is built for control, not for quick reactions. Think about how it walks. Every single step is a carefully managed sequence. First, a firm grip, then a test of the branch's stability, then a slow transfer of weight, and finally, securing its position with its tail. Only then does it begin the next movement. This is a mechanical process that simply cannot be rushed. Speed would mean risking a slip, a loss of balance, or a fall, which in the world of trees is often a death sentence. This deliberate pace is also hardwired into its muscles. Chameleon muscle fibers are dominated by a type adapted for long-lasting tension, not for short, explosive bursts. These are holding muscles, not firing ones. This is why a chameleon can hang in a single, awkward position for hours without showing any signs of fatigue. The trade-off for this incredible endurance is a lack of raw speed. Then there's the energy cost. Like most reptiles, chameleons have a relatively slow metabolism. Every sudden, jerky movement is an expensive energy that isn't easily replenished. Their hunting strategy isn't about a frantic chase, it's about perfect timing. They might spend hours in absolute stillness, all for that one single, perfectly synchronized lunge of the tongue. In a world where efficiency is everything, speed is simply a waste. This slowness also serves as a powerful form of defense. The vision of many predators, like birds and snakes, is highly tuned to detect movement. An object that is motionless, or moves incredibly slowly, often doesn't even register as potential prey. A chameleon, moving at the pace of a leaf swaying gently in the wind, effectively disappears. It ceases to exist as something alive in the predator's perception. This isn't just camouflage of color. It's camouflage of behavior, and it's not just slow. It's unnaturally smooth. A chameleon's steps are fluid, without any sudden starts or stops. This makes it even harder to spot. Nature rarely moves abruptly without a reason. The wind, the rustling leaves, the swaying branches, they all follow a certain rhythm. The chameleon doesn't break that rhythm, it becomes part of it. This whole process is guided by a highly sophisticated sensory system. The chameleon relies heavily on its incredible vision and spatial analysis. Before making a single move, it meticulously maps its surroundings, judging distances, checking the stability of its path, and identifying any potential threats. This isn't an impulsive reaction, it's careful, deliberate planning. And good planning takes time. Of course, this strategy has its limits. On the ground, a chameleon is vulnerable. It's slow, awkward, and easy to spot. But the chameleon is not an animal of the ground. Its world is vertical, a three-dimensional space of height and branches. Up there, slowness isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. It's an evolutionary choice to master its environment not through speed, but through absolute control. Now let's talk about the organ that makes all of this possible. Its skin. A chameleon's skin is far more than just a protective covering. It's a multifunctional, high-tech interface with its world. At a basic level, it's made of an epidermis and dermis covered in keratin scales like other reptiles. But the arrangement of these scales is unique. They don't form a smooth, uniform surface. Instead, they vary in size and shape, creating an irregular mosaic. This uneven texture breaks up the animal's outline by scattering light, making it even harder to recognize as a single, living creature. In many species, these scales are tiny bumps or even small spines. These aren't just for show. They increase the skin's surface area, which is crucial for managing body temperature. As an ectothermic or cold-blooded animal, a chameleon is completely dependent on its environment for warmth. Its skin acts as a precise thermostat. The microtexture of the scales helps it to warm up faster in the sun or release heat more efficiently in the shade. The chameleon's skin is also remarkably tough. Living in a world of thorny branches, rough bark, and sharp leaves means constant friction. Skin that was too delicate would quickly get torn, leading to infections or dehydration. The keratinized scales act as a flexible but durable suit of armor. At the same time, it can't be too rigid. Chameleons are constantly bending their bodies and stretching their limbs into incredible positions. Elastic connections between the scales allow for a huge range of motion without the skin cracking. It's a perfect balance between protection and mobility. Water management is another critical job for the skin. Chameleons often live in places where water isn't found in ponds or streams, but as dew or rain on leaves. Their skin is adapted to minimize water loss through evaporation, which is vital in hot climates. This thick, horny layer keeps precious moisture locked inside. The skin also has a sensory role. While vision is their primary sense, the skin is packed with receptors that can feel the pressure of a branch, the vibrations of an approaching animal, or even subtle shifts in the wind. When a chameleon is sitting perfectly still, its skin becomes its early warning system. You might have also noticed that some chameleons have elaborate crests, folds, or horns on their heads and backs. These structures can be used for signaling to other chameleons, but they also have practical uses. The extra folds of skin increase surface area for thermoregulation, and crests can help stabilize the chameleon as it flattens its body against a branch. Even the way a chameleon sheds its skin is tied to its lifestyle. Unlike a snake that sheds in one piece, a chameleon sheds in patches. It removes the old skin by rubbing against branches, a process that happens right in the middle of its daily life, in constant contact with its environment. So the chameleon's skin isn't just a passive wrapper. It's an active organ that protects, insulates, feels, and manages heat and water, all while helping the chameleon move and blend in. Without this incredibly complex skin, the specialized limbs, the prehensile tail, and the strategy of slow movement would be useless. It's in the skin that we see just how perfectly this animal is designed for one specific world and one way of life. A world where it's not about being the fastest or the strongest, but about being the most precise, the most patient, and the most perfectly in tune with your surroundings. What's the first thing you think of when you hear the word chameleon? Color change, right? For years, we've been told a simple story. Chameleons change color to blend in and hide. It sounds logical, it sounds simple, and it's almost completely wrong. This idea that chameleons are masters of disguise is one of the most persistent myths in the animal kingdom. But when you actually watch them, the myth falls apart. If it was all about hiding, why would a chameleon, when threatened, often do the exact opposite? Why would it burst into bright, contrasting colors, making itself visible from a mile away? The truth is far more fascinating. A chameleon's color change isn't a magic trick for invisibility. It's a language. A complex, silent, and incredibly honest language. It's a way for a chameleon to broadcast who it is, how it's feeling, and what it wants, all written on its skin for the world to see. It's a social signal, an emotional readout, and a physiological tool, all rolled into one. Let's start with communication. For a chameleon, another chameleon is never just a passerby. It's a rival, a potential mate, or a direct threat. And long before any physical interaction, there's a conversation in color. Intense hues, bold stripes, or sudden spots all carry a message. This is my territory. I'm the boss here, or don't even think about it. Thanks to this visual language, most fights end before they even begin. Color replaces combat. During mating season, this language becomes even more dramatic. A male will put on a full-spectrum fashion show, displaying his most vibrant colors to prove his health and dominance. Females respond in kind, their colors clearly stating whether they're interested or not, and there's no room for misinterpretation. An attempt to ignore her colorful no will be met with aggression or a hasty retreat. Color is a message that can't be ignored, but this language isn't just for talking to other chameleons. It's also a direct window into their internal state. A chameleon literally wears its emotions on its sleeve, or, well, its skin. Stress, fear, excitement, you can see it all. A sudden flash of dark or chaotic colors often means it's overwhelmed. A new environment, the shadow of a predator, or even just being picked up by a human, its skin reacts instantly, far faster than it can physically run or hide. Color is also essential for survival in a more fundamental way. Temperature control. Chameleons are ectothermic, meaning they rely on their environment for heat. Their skin color is like a built-in thermostat. By changing its color, a chameleon can control how much heat it absorbs from the sun. On a cool morning, it might turn darker to soak up warmth faster. As the day heats up, it might lighten its skin to reflect the sun's rays and avoid overheating. This isn't about looking good, it's about staying alive. Too cold, and its reactions are dangerously slow. Too hot, and it could be fatal. So where does camouflage fit into all of this? It's there, but it's at the very bottom of the list. Yes, a chameleon can match its background, but it usually does this only when it's calm, relaxed, and not feeling threatened. In moments of panic, it's more likely to become more visible, not less. This is the complete opposite of what the old stories taught us. So why do we cling to the camouflage myth? Probably because, as humans, that's how we think of color, as a way to hide or stand out. But for a chameleon, color is information. It's a living billboard of its emotions and intentions, not a cloak of invisibility. And it's not a conscious choice. There's no change to green button. It's an automatic physiological response to everything happening inside and out. When we see a chameleon change color, We're not seeing a trick. We're reading its mind and body. But how do they do it? What's the secret mechanism that makes this incredible feat possible? The answer isn't paint, it's physics. A chameleon's skin is a marvel of biological engineering, a multi-layered structure where each level plays a different role. Deep down, there are cells with dark pigments, which create the darker shades and absorb light. But the real magic happens in the layers above. Here, the skin isn't using pigment to create color, it's manipulating light itself. The most extraordinary part of this system is a layer of skin cells containing tiny, perfectly ordered nanocrystals. Think of them as a natural, living, optical grid. These crystals don't have any color of their own. Instead, they intercept light waves. And here's the brilliant part. The chameleon can actively change the spacing between these crystals. By tensing or relaxing tiny muscles in the skin, it can shrink or expand the grid. When the crystals are packed tightly together, they reflect shorter wavelengths of light, like blue and green. When they spread apart, they reflect longer wavelengths, like yellow, orange, and red. So the color you see is often not a chemical pigment, but a physical effect light being bent and reflected in a specific way. This is why their color changes can be so incredibly fast and fluid. The chameleon doesn't need to produce new pigments. It just needs to slightly adjust the tension in its skin. The entire optical system retunes itself in an instant. Different layers can also work together. One layer might reflect blue light, while a layer of yellow pigment sits on top, resulting in the vibrant green we so often see. This layering is what gives chameleon colors their depth and iridescence, sometimes making them look almost metallic. This system is also incredibly precise. A chameleon doesn't always have to change its entire body color. It can create specific patterns, a single stripe, a few spots, by activating these structures in just one small area. It's like having a high-resolution biological screen for skin. Of course, not all chameleons are created equal. Different species have different capabilities, with skin structures tailored by evolution for their specific lifestyle and environment. For some, the range of colors is vast. For others, it's more subtle. Let's look at when these changes happen in real time. When two male chameleons spot each other, the color conversation starts immediately. They might shift from dull, resting colors to aggressive, high-contrast patterns in seconds. The brighter and bolder the display, the more dominant the male is declaring himself to be. Often, one will simply concede to the other's superior display and back away, avoiding a physical fight entirely. Stress is another major trigger. If you move a chameleon to a new terrarium, or if a predator flies overhead, you'll often see it darken dramatically. The colors can become muddy, chaotic. This isn't a choice. It's a visible sign of its nervous system firing on all cylinders. The skin is broadcasting its anxiety. Even hunting causes subtle shifts. As a chameleon locks onto its prey, its body tenses in concentration. Its colors might sharpen slightly, reflecting its focused state. And when it's finally time to rest, safe and sound, its colors become their most subdued and stable. This is when it's most likely to blend in, not because it's actively hiding, but because its body is in a state of equilibrium. Even illness shows up in the colors. A sick or dehydrated chameleon will have dull, patchy, or washed-out skin. For a trained eye, this color change is one of the earliest warning signs that something is wrong. So the next time you see a chameleon, look closer. Don't just see the color. Try to read the language. You're not just looking at a beautiful animal. You're looking at a living, breathing emotional and physical status update, written in the language of light. The chameleon's eyes are, without exaggeration, one of the most extraordinary sensory systems ever produced by evolution. If the rest of its body represents adaptive mastery, then its eyes are the absolute peak. Not because they look strange, but because they operate in a way that completely defies our intuitions about vision. At first glance, one thing is obvious: a chameleon's eyes move independently. Each one moves in its own direction, as if controlled by a separate brain. And in a sense, that's exactly what's happening. Each eye can observe a different part of the world, analyze different movement, and track a different object. A chameleon can look forward, backward, up, and down all at the same time without moving its head even a single millimeter. This gives it something almost no other land animal possesses: nearly complete panoramic vision. The chameleon's field of view approaches 360 degrees. This means that a predator has almost no chance of approaching from behind unnoticed. In the world of trees and branches, where danger can come from any direction, This is an absolute advantage for survival. But there is something even more remarkable going on. These independent eyes don't just look, they analyze. Each eye independently detects movement, estimates distance, and tracks trajectories. The chameleon scans the space around it without moving its body, without revealing its presence. To an observer, it might look like total chaos, one eye pointing left, the other right, but for the chameleon, it's a perfectly ordered data-gathering process. For most of the time, the chameleon doesn't see the world stereoscopically, the way we do. Instead, it perceives its surroundings as a vast map of movement and potential events. This is its observation mode, its vigilance mode. In this state, precision doesn't matter as much as awareness does. But the moment prey appears, everything changes. When one eye detects something worth paying attention to, an insect, a spider, or some other small prey, the chameleon doesn't attack immediately. First comes targeting. The eye that spotted the prey gradually takes control. The other eye continues to monitor the surroundings, but its role diminishes. The body remains perfectly motionless. And then comes the absolutely critical moment. Just before the strike, the eyes synchronize. Both eyes align on exactly the same point. In an instant, the chameleon shifts from panoramic vision to stereoscopic vision. This change lasts only a fraction of a second, but in that moment, its brain receives precise information about distance, depth, and the prey's exact position in space. This is the moment the decision is made, now. Without this synchronization, the attack would be a complete gamble. With it, the strike becomes almost surgically precise. The chameleon doesn't need to move closer. It doesn't need to adjust its position. Its body already knows exactly where the target is. What is also crucial is that the chameleon's eyes are almost entirely covered by its eyelids. Only a small dark pupil remains visible. This isn't just for mechanical protection. It's another way of minimizing any movement that could give it away. The eye can rotate and change its direction of gaze, while to an observer, it appears as nothing more than the barely perceptible shift of a tiny dot. Thanks to this, the chameleon can track its prey without moving its head, neck, or torso. And in a world where movement equals detection, this advantage is decisive for hunting success. The chameleon's eyes are not just strange. They are a highly advanced system that allows it to exist in a state of constant observation, while switching into a mode of maximum precision exactly when needed. These are not the eyes of a hunter who chases its prey. They are the eyes of a sniper who waits, and that brings us to its weapon. The chameleon's tongue is one of the most extraordinary hunting structures in the entire animal kingdom. Not just because of how it works, we'll get to that, but because of what it actually is and the role it plays in the life of this reptile. This isn't an auxiliary organ. It's the chameleon's primary weapon, the absolute center of its survival strategy. In most animals, the tongue is used to manipulate food, to swallow, or sometimes to communicate. But in the chameleon, its function has been completely rewritten. It stopped being a component of the mouth and became a tool for long-distance hunting. The first thing that breaks our intuition is the length. A chameleon's tongue can be longer than its entire body. And this isn't a small difference. In some species, the fully extended tongue can be several times the length of its torso. This means the chameleon hunts from a distance that is completely unattainable for other lizards. That length changes everything. The chameleon doesn't need to approach its prey. It doesn't need to give itself away with movement. It doesn't need to change its position. It can remain in absolute stillness while its weapon reaches far beyond the limits of its own body. In a world where every step carries risk, this is an enormous advantage. The tongue is also incredibly powerful. It doesn't look like much when it's retracted, but in the moment of use it becomes a tool of surprising force. It has to be. A chameleon's prey often includes insects with hard exoskeletons that are capable of instant escape. The contact must be decisive. There's no room for delicacy or second attempts. At the very tip of the tongue is a structure that functions like a biological trap. The sticky, elastic end doesn't just glue itself to the prey in the way we might think. It wraps around the prey. It conforms to its shape, dramatically increasing the surface area of contact. So even if the insect is large, spiny, or struggling to break free, the capture happens almost instantly. Importantly, this stickiness isn't constant or simple. The tip of the tongue works effectively, under a wide range of conditions, varying humidity, temperature, and on all different kinds of surfaces. It's a universal weapon, not one specialized for a single type of prey. The chameleon's tongue also changes the very way we think about hunting. This isn't a chase, and it's not an ambush in the classic sense. It's distance hunting, where the body remains motionless, and the only element that leaves the safe zone is the weapon itself. The chameleon doesn't enter the prey's space, it pulls the prey into its own. This strategy fits perfectly with its slow, deliberate way of life. If it had to run, jump, or lunge at its prey, its entire set of adaptations like its camouflage and slow movements would lose their purpose. The tongue allows it to remain what it is, a silent, invisible observer. It's also worth remembering that the tongue is not only a tool for acquiring food, but also for reducing risk. Every hunt involves some degree of exposure. The shorter the contact with the prey and the farther it occurs from the body, the lower the threat from predators lurking nearby. The tongue reduces this moment of vulnerability to an absolute minimum. The chameleon's tongue is not just a curiosity. It is a biological weapon engineered to perfection. A weapon that allows it to live slowly, calmly, and effectively in a world where most other animals must rush simply in order to survive. From its 360-degree vision to its lightning-fast tongue, the chameleon is a master of patience and precision. It's a living testament to how evolution can produce solutions that are both bizarre and brilliant. The mechanism of the chameleon's tongue is where this story stops being merely strange and becomes truly extreme. Because here, we're not just talking about cleverness or adaptation. We're talking about physics pushed to the very limits of biology. A chameleon's tongue doesn't work like a normal muscle. If it relied only on muscle contraction, it could never move so fast. You see, vertebrate muscles have hard limits on how fast they can contract and how much force they can generate. The chameleon's tongue completely bypasses those limits. The secret is that the energy for the strike isn't generated at the moment of launch. It's stored beforehand. For just a fraction of a second, the chameleon's body loads the entire system, like drawing back a spring. The muscles aren't performing some explosive action. They're slowly building up potential energy, which is then released all at once. When the attack happens, this energy is unleashed instantaneously. And it's this release that makes the tongue's movement so unbelievably fast. It isn't limited by muscle speed, but by the elastic properties of the tongue's structure itself. It's the same principle as a catapult, a slow, deliberate loading process followed by an instant release. The result is an acceleration so extreme that relative to its body size, the chameleon outperforms nearly every other vertebrate on the planet. For the prey, this isn't just a fast movement. It's an event that happens before its brain even has time to register it. That's why it's called one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom. The time from the chameleon's decision to the tongue making contact is extraordinarily short. Shorter than an insect's reaction time. Shorter than an escape reflex. Shorter than a blink, but this movement isn't just fast. It has to be incredibly precise. The tongue doesn't just fly off in a general direction. It strikes the exact point the chameleon's eyes targeted with millimeter accuracy. At that speed, the tiniest error in timing would mean a complete miss. This just shows how perfectly synchronized the whole system is. The vision, the nervous system, and the launch mechanics all working as one. The force of the impact isn't random either. The tongue has to not only reach the prey, but instantly stick to it and begin the retraction process. The entire sequence launch, capture, and return functions as a single, continuous impulse, with no room for delays or corrections. It's also worth noting that this mechanism works no matter the chameleon's size. In fact, in smaller species, it's proportionally even more extreme. The smaller the body, the greater the relative accelerations and forces involved. From a physics perspective, this is truly at the edge of what's biologically possible. And that brings us to the main point. The chameleon's tongue isn't just fast. For an animal, it's fast by the standards of biological law itself. This is a movement that exists only because the chameleon couldn't afford to run, chase, or fight. If its body was going to be slow, its weapon had to become extreme. Evolution concentrated all the dynamics into one single brief moment. One strike. A fraction of a second. And then silence returns to the forest. The chameleon's diet is a direct result of its unique lifestyle. There are no chases, no struggles, no fights for prey. Everything happens in silence, with stillness and surgical precision. The chameleon isn't an active hunter. It's a waiting predator. For most species, the diet is almost entirely insects. Grasshoppers, crickets, flies, beetles, spiders, basically anything that wanders within tongue range and can be swallowed whole. Larger chameleons might occasionally eat a small vertebrate, like a lizard or a baby bird, but that's the exception, not the rule. The chameleon just isn't built to handle large, struggling prey. Its strength lies in precision, not brute force. What it eats has to be accessible, predictable, and something that can be immobilized in a single motion. That's why insects are the perfect meal. They are abundant, diverse, and always present in the trees and bushes where chameleons live. A chameleon doesn't need rare, big-ticket prey. A steady supply of small energy portions is more than enough. Its hunting technique is the classic wait and strike, but it's been refined to absolute perfection. The chameleon finds a good spot a branch with a clear view and stable support for its feet and tail, and then it disappears. It can stay like this for a very, very long time. It doesn't move. It doesn't adjust its position. It gives away nothing about its presence. During this time, its eyes are constantly working. They scan the area, analyze movements, and evaluate potential prey based on distance and accessibility. But the chameleon doesn't react to every little thing that moves. Most stimuli are simply ignored. It's waiting for the perfect moment, the one with the highest probability of success. When that moment arrives, the attack is instant. No warm-ups. No warnings. One action, one shot. If it's successful, the prey vanishes. If it fails, the chameleon often just goes back to being still as if nothing happened. It doesn't chase. It doesn't try again. Patience matters more than desperation. And the camouflage in this process isn't just about its appearance. It's an entire set of behaviors. The slow, deliberate movements, the gentle swaying that mimics a leaf in the wind, the total absence of sudden gestures. The chameleon doesn't just pretend to be a leaf, it behaves like a leaf. To an insect, it's not a threat, it's just part of the scenery. Patience is everything here. In the chameleon's world, hunting isn't a sequence of actions. It's a state of being. The animal is always in hunting mode, even when nothing is happening for long stretches of time. Energy isn't wasted on running around. It's saved for that one decisive moment. This hunting style has a huge advantage. It minimizes risk. Every movement is a potential threat. Every chase is a chance to fall, be seen by a predator, or waste precious energy. The chameleon avoids all of that by reducing hunting to a single powerful impulse. The chameleon's diet and the way it gets its food reveals something really important about it. This isn't an animal trying to win a race in a world full of fast predators. It's an animal that completely changed the rules of the game. It doesn't run, it doesn't chase, it doesn't fight. It waits. And in that silence, in that apparent inactivity, lies an effectiveness that most other predators could only dream of. The chameleon is an extremely solitary animal. And this isn't just a quirky personality trait, it's fundamental to how it survives. In the chameleon's world, the presence of another chameleon is almost always a problem, not a benefit. Most chameleons lead a strictly solitary life. Each adult occupies its own little patch of the world, a few trees, some shrubs, a collection of branches, and treats it as personal territory. There are no herds, no family groups, no shared hunting grounds. The proximity of another chameleon means competition, for food, for space, and for safety. Their lifestyle simply doesn't allow for crowding. Remember, a chameleon hunts from ambush, relying on silence and stillness. Another individual nearby means extra movement, more vibrations through the branches, and a higher risk of giving away its position. So, being alone is actually a hunting strategy. Interactions between chameleons are brief and usually tense. They mostly happen at territorial borders or during the breeding season, and even then they rarely become physical. Before any real conflict happens, there's a lot of visual communication, body posture, head orientation, puffing up their sides, and of course, changing colors. These are all warning signals with one purpose: to avoid a fight. Physical fights are risky. The chameleon isn't built for close combat. Its limbs and tail are designed for gripping, not for delivering blows. Any injury in a treetop world can seriously affect its ability to move and hunt. That's why conflicts are usually resolved from a distance. This solitary nature is also visible in their everyday behavior. They don't seek company. They don't respond well to the presence of others. Even the young, right after hatching, quickly disperse and start fending for themselves. There's no parental care here, no learning from watching adults. Interestingly, a chameleon's solitude doesn't mean it's constantly aggressive. Most of the time, it's just indifferent. If another individual is far enough away and isn't encroaching on its space, it might just be ignored. but that boundary of tolerance is very narrow and clearly defined. This way of life also influences its daily rhythm. The chameleon doesn't have to adjust to a group. It chooses its own basking spots, decides for itself when to hunt, when to move, and when to stay still. All of its activity is subordinate to a single organism and its own point of view. So the chameleon's solitude isn't a sign of it being primitive or lacking social skills. On the contrary, it's proof of an incredibly precise match between its lifestyle and its environment. Although the chameleon leads a solitary life, this does not mean it cannot communicate. The number one tool in a chameleon's communication kit is its posture. How it sits on a branch, the angle of its body, whether it shows its side or stays in line with the branch. Every little detail sends a message. When a chameleon turns sideways, it instantly looks bigger. This also shows off its skin patterns more clearly. It's a way of saying, hey, I'm here, this is my space. Look at me. One of their most dramatic moves is inflating their body. They can suck air into their lungs and tense their muscles, making their torso expand. Suddenly, this normally slender lizard becomes wider, more massive, and impossible to ignore. This is a classic back-off signal we see in other animals. But for a chameleon, it's especially powerful because it's such a contrast to their usual slim look. This puffing up move often comes with another trick. They straighten their legs and lift their body high. In an instant, the chameleon grows right before your eyes. It's not an attack. It's not moving closer. It's a clear signal that says, pushing this further is a really bad idea. And most of the time, that's all it takes. The other chameleon gets the message and backs away. But it's not just about the body. Head movements are just as important. Slow, controlled swaying, little lifts of the head, or sometimes short, sharp jerks. These are all part of the conversation. Head movements often reinforce what the body is saying. A head pointed directly at another chameleon means it's paying attention and ready for whatever comes next. Turning its head away can signal that it's not interested or wants to end the interaction. In some species, you can even see these subtle nods, almost like a slow-motion yes. This isn't just a random twitch. It's a way of testing the other chameleon's reaction. If the other one responds aggressively, the tension builds. If not, the conflict just fades away. What's really fascinating is how energy efficient all of this is. The chameleon isn't jumping around, lunging, or making wild gestures. Its communication style perfectly matches its lifestyle. Slow, controlled, and crystal clear to the other guy, but with very little risk. Body posture, puffing up, and head movements all work together in a seamless signaling system. Of course, color changes add emphasis to the message, but even without them, the shape and movement of the body carry all the information needed. This is crucial because it allows them to communicate even in low light or from a distance. In the world of chameleons, communication isn't about building friendships. It's about ending interactions quickly. It's about figuring out who gives away, who gets to stay, and whether it's worth escalating a conflict or just better to walk away. It's a fast, efficient system for resolving disputes. Now let's talk about how chameleons bring the next generation into the world. Just like the rest of their lives, their reproductive cycle is all about efficiency and independence. You won't find any long courtships, shared parenting, or complicated family dynamics here. The life cycle is simple in its structure but incredibly diverse when you look at different species. For the vast majority of chameleons, it's all about laying eggs. After a very brief encounter between a male and a female, she's on her own. After a while, she'd do something very risky. She'd climb down to the ground. For a tree-dwelling chameleon, the ground is a dangerous place, but it's the only place she can lay her eggs. She finds a spot with soft soil, digs a hole, lays her eggs, and then carefully covers them up, and that's it. Her job is done. She doesn't come back. She doesn't guard the nest. There's no parental care in the way we think of it. The chameleon's strategy is all about numbers and hiding, not protection. The eggs are left to develop on their own, often for many months, depending on the species and the temperature. The number of eggs can range from just a few in smaller species to several dozen in larger ones. This is a massive energy drain for the female. She's often visibly exhausted after laying, and in the wild, many don't even survive this period. The chameleon life cycle is short, intense, and unforgiving. But not all chameleons lay eggs. Some species, especially those living in cooler or less stable climates, have evolved to give live birth. In this case, the fertilized eggs develop inside the female's body and the babies are born fully formed and ready to go. This is even more demanding on the mother's body, but it's much safer in places where the soil temperature or humidity can't be trusted. Live birth allows the female to have more control over her offspring's development, protecting them from cold, drying out, and predators that might dig up a nest. The trade-off is a smaller number of babies and an even greater physical toll on the mother. From our human point of view, this lack of parental care might seem harsh or even like a biological failure. But in reality, it's one of the most logical and consistent evolutionary choices in their entire history. The chameleon doesn't abandon its young. It simply operates on a system where care was never part of the equation. The moment a baby chameleon is born or hatches, it's not the start of a protected childhood. It's an immediate launch into adulthood. There's no learning phase, no lessons from mom or dad, no guide. The second a young chameleon enters the world, it already has to know how to move, grip branches, react to its surroundings, and find food. Instinct takes the place of upbringing. Why does it work this way? Because the chameleon's lifestyle can't handle dependency. An adult chameleon couldn't possibly hunt in silence, stay invisible, and at the same time look after a clumsy, noisy baby. Every extra movement is a risk. Every sound, every vibration of a branch, every other body nearby just increases the chance of being spotted by a predator. Parental care is a luxury for animals that can afford to be around others. Chameleons can't, so their strategy is different. Instead of protecting one or two young for a long time, the chameleon invests in numbers, not relationships. It lays a lot of eggs or has several live young, knowing full well that most of them won't make it. This isn't a flaw in the system, it's the foundation of it. The death rate for young chameleons is incredibly high. Predators, inexperience, bad weather, disease, everything is working against them. But the ones that do survive learn about the world in the most brutal but effective way possible, right from day one. If they survive, it means their instincts were good enough. Evolution has done its job. This no-care model of life also has a big impact on a chameleon's lifespan. Many species live surprisingly short lives. 2, 3, or maybe 4 years is the norm, not the exception. There are even some species that live their entire life in a single season. They're born, they mature, they reproduce, and they die all within about a year. But a short lifespan isn't a sign of weakness. It's the result of a live fast, die young strategy. In environments where things change quickly and threats are everywhere, living a long time doesn't offer any real advantage. What matters is being able to seize a good opportunity when it comes along. The chameleon doesn't plan for the future. It lives in the here and now. Of course, some species do live longer, especially in more stable habitats or in captivity. But even for them, the rule of no parental care never changes. It's a fundamental part of their biology. It's also worth thinking about how a short life makes everything more intense. Every single day counts. Every successful breeding season is a complete fulfillment of the opportunity that nature gave them. There's no time for mistakes. There's no safety net. The absence of parental care and a short life cycle create a perfectly balanced system. The young are independent from the very beginning because they have to be. The adults don't live long because they don't need to. All of their energy is channeled into adaptation, not endurance. The chameleon is not just an exotic element of the landscape. It is part of a mechanism that maintains balance in the environments it inhabits. Let's start with the most obvious job: pest control. Chameleons are master insect hunters. Think of them not as clumsy eaters, but as highly specialized, precise predators. They don't just gobble up everything in sight. Instead, they systematically pick off excess insects from tree canopies, shrubs, and plants. This is incredibly important, especially in tropical and subtropical regions where insect populations can explode. Without natural regulators like the chameleon, these insects could devastate plants, weaken entire forests, and throw the food web into chaos. The chameleon acts like a finely tuned filter, not a sledgehammer. It mainly targets insects active during the day, the very ones often munching on fresh leaves and new growth. By doing this, it reduces pressure on vegetation, allowing plants to thrive. In a healthy ecosystem, it's all about balance, and the chameleon is a key player in maintaining that equilibrium. But the story doesn't end there. The chameleon isn't just a predator, it's also prey. It's an important source of food for birds of prey, snakes, and even some mammals. This means it's a crucial link in the flow of energy through the ecosystem. It takes the energy from the insects it eats and passes it up the food chain to larger animals. The chameleon isn't just a pretty ornament hanging on a branch. It's a functioning, essential cog in the great machine of nature. However, this very specialization makes the chameleon incredibly vulnerable. Its entire existence, its body, its behavior, its life cycle is tuned to a very specific set of conditions. It needs the right temperature, the right humidity, and the right kind of plants to survive. Even small changes can have disastrous consequences. Climate change is a massive threat. Shifting temperatures mess with their metabolism and their ability to regulate their body heat. Changes in rainfall patterns affect their access to water and, just as importantly, the availability of their insect prey. If the rainy season is disrupted, so is their reproductive cycle. For an animal with a short lifespan and a high death rate among its young, this is incredibly dangerous. And then there's the direct destruction of their homes. Deforestation, agriculture, and urban sprawl are wiping out the very habitats chameleons depend on. They need continuous tree canopies, a diverse mix of vegetation, and a stable microclimate. A chameleon can't just pack its bags and move to the next neighborhood. If its tree is cut down, the chameleon often disappears right along with it. They are not pioneers who can thrive in a degraded landscape. This is precisely why scientists consider chameleons to be powerful bioindicators, living signals of an ecosystem's health. If you find a stable, healthy chameleon population, it's a great sign. It means the environment is still providing everything needed for a complex web of life to flourish. Plenty of insects, a stable climate, and intact vegetation. But when chameleons start to disappear, it's a blaring alarm bell. It's a warning that the system is breaking down. Their decline is often a precursor to more widespread ecological problems that will eventually affect many other species, including us. The quiet, slow, and often overlooked chameleon tells us a profound story about the health of our world. When it's gone, we soon realize that something much larger has gone wrong. Now, let us step away from the grand ecological picture and dive into some truly mind-bending facts that shatter the popular myths surrounding these creatures. The chameleon has been wrapped in folklore for centuries, and it's time to separate fact from fiction. First up, the famous color change. Contrary to what you see in cartoons, not every chameleon can cycle through a rainbow of vibrant colors. In fact, many species only change subtly, shifting between shades of brown, gray, and green. To our eyes, it might look like nothing is happening. But for another chameleon, these slight shifts are a clear and deliberate form of communication. The spectacular color shows are the exception, not the rule. Their color isn't for camouflage as much as it is for communicating mood, health, and social status. Next, let's talk about size. When you picture a chameleon, you probably imagine something that fits in your hand. But what about one that fits on your fingertip? The smallest chameleons in the world are truly minuscule. Species like the Bracacia micra are so tiny that as adults, they're only about an inch long. When they sit on a leaf, they look more like a tiny bit of debris than a fully grown reptile. These aren't just babies. They live their entire lives on a microscopic scale. Here is a fact that sounds like it's from a sci-fi movie. Some chameleons glow under ultraviolet light. This isn't bioluminescence, where they produce their own light. Instead, parts of their skeleton, particularly around the head, absorb UV light and re-emit it as a visible blue glow that shines through their thin skin. We can't see this with our naked eyes, but other chameleons can. It's a secret communication channel completely invisible to us, likely used for species recognition or signaling. And speaking of seeing things we can't, a chameleon's vision is extraordinary. Not only can their eyes move independently, giving them a nearly 360-degree view of the world, but they also see colors that are completely outside our own visible spectrum. This means their world is visually much richer and more complex than ours. Patterns and signals on another chameleon's skin that look dull to us might be screaming with color and meaning to them. Another common misconception is that color change is always a slow, gradual process. While it can be, many chameleons can change color in a fraction of a second. It's not always a dramatic, slow-motion transformation. It can be a lightning-fast flash of emotion, a rapid response to a threat or a rival that appears and disappears before we can even fully register it. Finally, let us bust the biggest myth of all. A chameleon does not copy its background like a screen. It doesn't scan a leaf and then reproduce its pattern pixel for pixel. Its skin isn't some kind of organic wallpaper. The color change is a complex physiological response controlled by its brain. It's driven by emotions like fear or anger, by changes in light and temperature, and by the need to communicate. That's why you can see a green chameleon sitting on a brown branch. And it's not a mistake. It's simply not trying to be the branch. It's trying to be a chameleon. So what does all this tell us? The chameleon is infinitely more complex and fascinating than its pop culture caricature suggests. It is not a living screen or a magical trick of nature. It's a highly evolved animal that perceives the world in ways we can't, communicates in secret languages, and plays an irreplaceable role in the health of its environment. The next time you see a chameleon, remember you're not just looking at a cool reptile. You're looking at a survivor, a messenger, and a fragile indicator of a world in balance.